you know, if you do, what is it? Matt?
All I'm hearing is the response that we're getting from 2 out of the 18 contestants, for want of a better word, from Stanford and Cornell, who are paying attention. Whether the others will meet this October deadline to get an RFP or not remains to be seen. It may be that we, hang out the last 2 months waiting for a decision to be made with only 2 academic institutions in play. We are not going to know, but I think it's very interesting the difference in approach between Stanford and Cornell.
And you're going to let me talk about the difference in approach?
Breathless to hear what you have to say.
What did you learn last night in terms of the relationship between RIRA and the Cornell people and Cornell's willingness to do a CBA and so on, or the CBA?
That's a very good question. It's actually partially why I thought we should have a meeting is because, first of all, what I realized, Dottie?
Well, I was just going to say, I didn't understand. Can you explain the nature of the meeting last night in Calder?
Yeah, it was actually Friday.
Or Friday.
I really want to answer that question and actually want to talk about it, but I think I want to take a step back. My impression is obvious. This thing is obviously.
I'm assuming everybody's here at this point.
Yeah, I know Jeff's coming, but he'll.
That sounds like it. Somebody else.
Howard's coming also.
Poltergeist.
Howard's coming?
Yeah.
It's a little scary.
Yeah, but he was like getting back to the office.
Hello?
Another meeting.
Is it Jeff? I'm afraid I don't know the moment.
You can actually see, people on the bike can see us.
It's seriously heated up. It's obviously. I mean, you've got Bill Clinton talking about it. You've got it in one form or another in the press. One way or another, it seems like every day or every other day. Oh, Frank, that wasn't you.
That was me.
Oh.
I was saying, how do you get in?
We thought it was Jeff.
Okay.
So I think, we have a very serious competition on our hands that's being taken seriously by at least Stanford and Cornell. As by way of an update.
But that's because the opportunity is so incredible.
The opportunity is incredible. Yeah,
Right.
it really.
It's the opportunity itself that's creating all this fervor.
Yeah, there may be. There
Well,
may be other things.
Yeah, but the
opportunity from my impression. Frank, I was just saying, I was curious what people's impressions were, what they've been hearing, sort of this. Me being sort of more involved in what's going on, having an impression of it. But for those of you who aren't as close, maybe following it as closely, kind of what
I would like to follow it more. I know there was a meeting the other week, and I'm in the command chain or whatever, the administrative chain, and I was completely unaware, there's a meeting, that was going on. So certainly I'd like to, be more aware of what's going on. And like this thing on the email that I saw, I guess it was Friday or something like that, it seemed like not only was there a meeting that I didn't know about or an issue that I didn't know about, but it seemed like it was already decided that I didn't know about it, and I just felt completely out of the loop.
Okay, fair enough. Is that to say that you don't really feel like I was looking for an answer more related to the press and the coverage and Bill Clinton talking about it with Christian Onfor and that kind of thing.
I'm following
like
up.
your sort of impression of what you have heard in the news.
What I heard, was what I just told you, was that there was upsetment from the.
There was what?
That there was upsetment, whatever the right word is, about not hearing, about feeling out of touch in RIRA.
Fair enough. Margie.
I think you're looking for more of a broader thing about what people on the island are talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that people think it's sort of narrowed down to Stanford and Cornell, but they feel like that's only because Cornell, first of all, because it's from New York, it's a New York State entity, and Cornell because they're so much wanting to be on the East Coast, but they still feel like there are plenty of other guys in the running. Like there's an Israeli institution that's apparently neck and neck with the others, but none of those entities have approached the island. But they don't
Okay.
know that means they're out of the running. They still think there's a broader.
Well, that's to Matt's
spectrum.
point, that there were, originally 18, but all anyone's hearing about is Stanford and Cornell. Hi, come on in.
Took a while to find the place.
Yeah. I guess you have to sit in front of class. Part of the reason we're hearing so much about Stanford and Cornell is they have both hired PR firms and they've both hired political consulting firms. And we can pull them up. That's part of the reason that I wanted to do this. But by way of history over the summer, at least in terms of island involvement, I remember back in the spring, I had reached out to Stanford to just say, hey, we've got this subcommittee, if there comes a time. And so that gentleman emailed me, and Jonathan and I ended up meeting with him, very preliminary at Starbucks, and I went through the spreadsheet that we did back in the spring, or I guess in June, really, May, June, which if you categorize that spreadsheet, you really come up with, I think, 3 broad categories. And I don't want this to be, tonight's meeting to be so much about what it is we're asking for, but more about how we go forward. But because I'm mentioning the 3 broad categories being community integration, both from ingress, egress, to facilities, to not being isolated down there, transportation, obviously, and energy, possibly. So we had a very broad discussion with Phil Topham from Stanford about all of those things. I think it was late July, honestly. I've sort of forgotten. We also had our meeting, so some of you don't know, in June at the Octagon, where Jeffrey went through the issues related to going forward, ultimately with the goal of having a community benefit agreement. So we mentioned that to Stanford. No, they, of course, that was sort of their idea. Now Jeffrey tells me that community benefit agreements are used throughout California. It's where they started, was in California, and it would be natural for Stanford to just be, sort of course. Then actually Matt was at a meeting, another meeting that Stanford organized, that was Matt, Jonathan, and a gentleman from River Cross who knows a fair amount about energy, whose name I don't know, right? I mean, you don't know that I don't know his name, but that's who was there.
Sanjeev Tandon, probably.
That's right.
That seems right.
Sanjeev.
Yeah. This is sort of disjointed, and I apologize for that. Out of our June meeting, where we talked about going forward with creating a community coalition where RIRA would be a member, but there would be people from all sorts of other organizations that would be that coalition, based on Jeffrey's advice, that that's the right way to do it. Then when obviously Jonathan had a little more time on his hands, Jonathan started working on thinking about both what would be reasonable to be able to ask for, as well as who all should be invited to that. So like I know he's invited you, he's invited you to a meeting that's supposed to be a preliminary meeting. If he hasn't, he's planning on it.
Planning. He
Pardon?
must be planning. 'Cause
Yeah, he's in somewhere like on a beach right now, so.
Really planning.
He conveniently left, I think, yesterday, but he'll be back in a week. But, as Jonathan's very skilled at, is sort of trying to figure out how we could maybe procure what would be of a great benefit to the island, possibly in the realm of energy. Obviously with the problems of Roosevelt landings and the other sub-metering issues, sort of kind of trying to feel out whether that would be a realistic way to go. Frank?
This is, again, a moment of disconnect, okay? Jonathan is out doing whatever, and I'm sure he, intends well, but, it's at this point where we have the Residents Association, which has established this committee to do this, okay? And then we have someone out there who's not been, I would put it in diplomatic, language of not been credentialized or not, in a sense that he's there, we haven't authorized him to represent RIRA on this, and we haven't sent him with his delegates' instructions.
Well, there's actually a very specific reason why. Because Jeffrey's very clear about this needs to be a non-RIRA coalition. I mean, RIRA can be in it, but it needs to be a non-RIRA
But then-
coalition.
but
And
then-
therefore, once
Yeah.
Jonathan was basically a free agent, and as educated as he is, and as connected as he is, and as committed as he is, basically Jonathan could have gone off completely on his own and started to do this and not even said a word to me. So given that he could have done that, and
That doesn't
he
mean we
maybe
have to
would
accept
done
that. I find that really,
Mark. Hi, Al.
I find that to be unacceptable, and let me just be clear about that, okay? I find that to be unacceptable to the community, and I find that unacceptable that you as the leader of this committee, okay, support that, okay?
Okay.
Because I think that it's very unreasonable to have one person going out advocating for the community. Yes, we've heard Jeffrey point out that the committee, that we need to form some other committee, but then that doesn't turn us all into, free agents at that point, where, Jonathan's advocating, for the community and arranging things that we don't even know what the pluses and
well, he's
minuses
not
are.
arranging anything. He's having conversations.
But then we
to-
should
to
be,
find
then we
out-
should be in the loop.
Well, we are in the loop because I'm talking to him, and we're having this meeting here tonight, in which I'm about to update you on all of that. So
But we don't have the conversations in advance. It's not like,
this is an advance, Frank.
no, he's
I'm
had
not
the
going
meetings.
to spend this meeting arguing about this.
Okay, I'll write it up.
Denise, that happened to.
Okay, I'm very
with Frank.
unsatisfied.
We had a conversation earlier today. I would like to know when things are happening, when they're happening, not after they've happened. I don't want to know about meetings after they've taken place. I joined this committee to be part of this committee, not to find out after the fact that Jonathan's talking to so-and-so, and you're talking to whoever, and the vice president is in town, and he's talking to whoever. I want to know when it's happening, otherwise I'm not going to be on the committee. That's what I thought I joined this for.
Matt?
As the only person in this room who was at that meeting, I can tell you that it was not a meeting called by RIRA. It was a meeting called by a vice president of Stanford. The purpose of the meeting was to make discussions, not to make any agreements or conclusions. Nothing was agreed on at this meeting. It was an open discussion of the energy needs of Stanford vis-a-vis the energy needs of Roosevelt Island. That was the sole function of the meeting. There were 4 people in the room. It was not a meeting in which 20 people of this committee were expected to be, and the purpose of this meeting tonight is to report in part on what happened at that meeting, which was an open discussion of energy, nothing decided, nothing concluded.
But I
And
happen to
actually,
represent a building where
both
this
meetings, the
energy
very
is.
first
Yes, but every
that
meeting,
way.
every building was not represented at this meeting.
Okay.
One engineer,
know what he-
one energy engineer was at the meeting talking in general about the steam plant, potential for that. Mr. Taubman was talking about the needs of Stanford, should they be chosen, what their needs for energy might be, and how they might coincide. It was simply an open meeting among 4 people.
All 3 meetings that have occurred have been at the request of the institution. And all 3, the institution, whether it be Cornell or Stanford, put restrictions on it. The first one, Phil Taubman, wrote me and said, I'd like to meet with maybe you, Matt, and maybe one other person, at most. I prefer 2, maybe 3. So I complied with that. Then he wrote again, I couldn't be there, same thing. The meeting that happened last Friday, I don't know if Sal Ferrara instigated it or Cornell instigated it. I believe Cornell instigated it from being in the meeting. They asked Sal if they could come, actually Cornell's political consultant. So in all 3 cases, any meetings that have taken place have been whether it's at Stanford's request or Cornell's request. And in fact, having this meeting tonight and sharing with you all what I'm going to share with you, I'm actually not abiding by what I said I would abide by necessarily in the Cornell meeting with Sal Ferrara, because I feel like it's important that this committee know, and that's why I called the meeting.
But
Ellen?
So, how did Sal Ferrara and you get invited to these meetings? What was the legitimacy that you struck with?
Well, Sal invited Matt, right? He sent it,
And I declined.
and you declined, right? And he copied Jonathan and me. Jonathan and I felt that it was really important that somebody from this coalition, our committee here, be at that meeting. And so we decided that I didn't think I could go. I actually called Alonka. Jonathan couldn't go. I didn't think I could go. I called Alonka to see if she could possibly go. She said she could. They changed the schedule around. I was able to go. So that's how it happened. I felt that it was important that we be there. I understood why Matt wouldn't want to be there, but I also thought it would be good for us to find out what was being said and see what we can deduce.
What about Sal?
Why
How
was
does he
he?
enter
Well,
into
I
it?
think this is critical. I mean, that is the question. Frank, do you have something different to say? Because we don't have that much time. It's
Well,
heavy.
I just want to point out that, yes, I heard you that the people made restrictions on the meetings. I accept that. I understand that. That is fine. The thing is, that does not diminish your responsibility to coordinate with the rest of us here and say, I'm having a meeting, I would like to prepare for this meeting, I'd like to make sure that we're in sync for that, okay? And as representing the committee, yes, I understand one person can go, but if there's a meeting on energy, this is something that my building is directly interested in.
And please go back to the South Ferrero. What position is he on at RIA?
So noted. I did feel like our 2 meetings in the spring where we went through what everyone was interested in this committee, and I got a spreadsheet that I had our input from that meeting. And then we had the second meeting about the community benefit agreement. So I didn't feel at that point I needed to come back to you all and say, I felt like I had this list, we talked through it, and so I felt like I had that information. It was also the middle of summer. Don? And
Just an opinion. This woman has been taking a bull by the horns. We're having a meeting here tonight, and we seem to be nickel and diming her. We should get on, see what she has to say, what the meetings were about.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Guys, we could work this into the ground, and I don't have the patience for it. And Denise has been very upfront about it. So why don't we let her take the floor, walk us through it, and save all the questions for the end.
I would say the one question answered that Alan and I asked.
She probably is going to answer it, Susan, so let her do it.
So there have been 3 meetings. The 2 with Stanford, I think you have the basic idea. We gave them an overview, then there was a meeting more specifically related to energy with an energy expert, and then this meeting with Sal and Cornell came up Friday. At the end of the day, I cannot say for sure who called that meeting. However, it's my impression that the political consultant hired by Cornell called it. And I don't know if you care to give your impression since you were there.
The impression I truly gave, which is the gentleman Pete, because I got there before Denise, just tiny, is that it was really his show.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be having his show.
The political consultant.
The political consultant
I
show.
think this is a really important point, so this is, you guys can talk about it for a
And let me
second.
just finish, I mean, it was very, very low-key, and he was directing the Cornell representatives to the conversation. But it was very much of his show, and it so happened to be here. I couldn't pinpoint who really, as Denise said, I really couldn't pinpoint who initially it, but it was truly his show. But there was a couple of factors that Denise brought up, which I'm going to leave to her, that caught him very off guard. And that's what really triggered this meeting, saying that we have to get our committee together, because pieces are now being put together. And that's why I'm saying we should let her write it out, and she'll answer the questions. But who actually called it? I couldn't begin to tell you. We couldn't get a business card out of this gentleman.
This is, Donna?
Well, I was just going to say, if, I assume Saul was there representing RIA? He was invited.
He was representing the child.
He was representing the child's school. It wasn't real. And Angela was there.
But nobody else was representing another entity on the island there.
Sal, an employee of the child's school, a gentleman named Angelo Aponte, who used to be chair of DHCR.
Do you remember the name? I've known every chairman of
told me
DHCR going
that
back
he-
to Bill
Chairman
Lynch.
of DHCR?
He
No.
said he was chair of
He made
DHCR.
that very, very clear.
Yeah,
How old was he?
Mature.
Well
Could
played.
have been, 30
Well
years
played.
ago, he could have been chair? Yeah, maybe.
25.
But
maybe.
certainly not in the.
Well,
recent
if it is the
past.
person that I think, he most recently was secretary of the New York State Senate, but he was.
Yeah, there was a bit of a write-up, a
From
bit of
that.
a brouhaha about him being bumped in the Senate. There was.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, it's just finishing.
I asked him
got it.
what his role was there, and he said Sal invited him, and I said, invited you to like today's meeting or like to advise overall, and I couldn't get a clear answer on that.
Maybe we should all Google him and find out.
So,
Maybe Google just
I didn't
find
pick
who
that
he
out.
is.
just Do Sal and the political consultant know each other for a long period of time?
I don't believe so.
I didn't get a long-term relationship feel at all.
I will say that Angelo did seem to be close to this, it's not this woman, but it's her firm.
Yeah.
It's a gentleman named Pete who works for her firm. It was, as Alonka said, his meeting. There were 2 people from Cornell there. Fernando was there, and the research intern that RIAC, a research fellow that RIAC
The
has.
fellow, she was there.
Nicole, I want to say Nicole. Yeah. So basically, that meeting, which Cornell asked to be off the record, after the fact. They were there to talk to Sal about could Cornell provide a K-12 benefit, K-12 education benefit to the island as a community contribution.
Nobody from 217?
Pardon?
Nobody from 217?
Nobody from 217. Sal talked a very long time about the child school. Yeah.
And passion.
Was 217 mentioned?
I was told that the principal from 217 wanted to attend, but for some reason she wasn't told of the time of the final meeting.
You know what, actually, Sal said she couldn't make it.
It was a
And that's all
9/8.
she said. He did
Oh, I wasn't
encourage
there
her.
for that
You
part.
weren't there yet. He made a very brief comment that he was expecting her, but she was unable to make it, and no further explanation, nor did I see an explanation. She wasn't there.
So,
Al.
yeah, you know, I don't want to ruffle things up here, but are we advocating an association with Southfire? Isn't the same guy we asked to step down from his appointment? I don't
No,
understand
we're
how
not.
he's interjected himself into the process and why we are working with him or how we are
Well,
connected.
We're sitting in the
that's
school
not-
right now.
I went to the meeting to do 2 things. To
was
gather
actually
information
important.
and to make sure they knew that we had a RIRA committee that was working to form a community coalition that was going to put in place a CBA, and this was going to be done right, and we were serious this time. And those were my only 2, not to give them any information, but to find out, to get information from them and let them know we existed, and we wanted fair and reasonable agreement with whoever. And when I made that point, the political consultant, how would you say his
He
reaction
was
was?
extremely taken back.
Taken aback?
Taken back. He was very blindsided by this information.
Yeah.
And then very much wanted to know, our names then became important.
And the next thing,
And I should also add that we were on the clock, but he really then kept us very much on the clock. In other words, he needed to get out of there to share this information.
yeah, he basically cut me off, because I was trying to say, and we've had a number of community meetings and our overall, and I wasn't going on and on. But we're looking at, an open and integrated campus and transportation. Well, we're here to talk about K-12 education. Okay? We'll have and I will say this, in fairness, he did say that there is this meeting coming up, organized by Cornell through Micah Kellner's office
Yes.
on Tuesday, September 27th. So he did defer also to that meeting. The most important thing to me that came out of it, I thought, was the reaction to the idea of us being involved in a coalition that would be taking forward a community benefit agreement.
Have we informed Mike McKellar's office that we're doing this?
Yes.
It seems like in his realm of experience that he was really new to these kind of expansions or.
What seemed
I
to
mean,
happen.
it's a standard practice.
Well, actually, it is standard practice. Angelo, for some reason, thought it important while the meeting was still going on to explain to me all the reasons why we shouldn't have a community benefit agreement and why we should have something called a restrictive DEC, which really stands for restrictive declaration, which I'm sure Al probably better at explaining than what I can explain, but my basic idea of it is it's more like, you can't have a bar open until 4 a.m. and you can't have buildings that are 60 stories high and, restricting a developer from doing certain things, as opposed to having an agreement with the developer that they're going to provide.
One short answer is no.
Denise, I have a couple of questions about that relationship, and then I have a comment. Didn't it strike you as a little bit premature for Cornell to be planning something for K through 12 when what they're trying to do at this point is work things out to.
But we were just as surprised
I don't find that surprising.
We were just as surprised to hear the layout.
Right. Well, the reason I asked that question is that Sal Ferreira is very well connected. We know that he has a strong connection to Marty Golden, who used to be on the city council, who's now in the state legislature. We also know that excuse me, Don, for what I'm about to say, but there's a little bit of an Italian mafia in this whole situation. And I don't mean a harmful mafia, I just mean
A friendly mafia.
I'm just talking about a friendly
In a
mafia.
good way.
And Angelo Aponte is a natural part of that, as is
I'm a little
Sal.
worried that the room's bugged.
And it strikes me as being very likely.
But for what it's worth, if the room's bugged, I held the meeting here on purpose because I wanted them to know we were serious.
Yeah.
Sal kept offering this facility.
Well,
so
I should probably
just
shut up.
take it
I should probably shut up if the room is bugged. But what you want to see there, I think, is that the relationship that Cornell, through this political consultant, may be trying to set up may have very little to do with K through 12, but very little, a great deal to do with buying political influence through Sal Ferreira and through giving him a gimme in the form of something involving K through 12 that is probably totally undefined at this point. At this point, there is a rather strong competition developing, as you observed, between Stanford and Cornell, and what you have going is a couple of political consultants having been hired. There's going to be some lobbyists involved at some point. And what you have further is an interest on the part of the governor's office in having a New York State operation get this, an interest on the part of the Bloomberg administration in having a connection with the West Coast where the dollars flow a little more freely and you're not going to be subjected to the pressures of what happens in New York State politics and New York State finances. Bottom line, you have to look past K through 12 and see.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
yeah.
did, actually, when Denise and I left that, and I have to say, my question to Denise was, you were there for Stanford, helped me put the pieces together, and quite frankly, she almost used the same wordings you just used, Dick. I mean,
They were
she had a bird's eye
completely
view of
different.
that.
Frank, they were completely different. I mean, going to meet with Stanford was sort of like, let's learn everything we can possibly learn about the community. Tell us all the different things we might be able to be involved with, and let's then see maybe if we can. And Stanford's been intending on organizing a larger meeting with the community, by the way. Let's help us understand what we could do, what would be a plus, what would be a minus. They wanted to know everything about public safety. I mean, we talked the gamut. It was very, and as we said before, they didn't react negatively to community benefit agreement at all. It was, of course, where this was. Now, granted, they had scheduled this meeting with Sal to have this conversation, but it was still they weren't interested, and they certainly were not in any way interested in us having a community benefit agreement. I mean, basically, Angelo and the consultant took me aside after the meeting, and as I thought about it afterwards, practically tackled me to try to talk me out of it.
I understand we've had this discussion before, so I'm not questioning the decision-making that we've done before, but I want to understand, just in terms of what you guys saw there, what were some of their arguments against the community benefit agreement? I'm curious to hear what their rhetoric is.
It wasn't in the article.
Oh, no, you didn't hear, when you were.
Do you understand why I'm asking about that?
They never work. You're going to have to hire 8 electricians from Roosevelt Island and 4 plumbers from Roosevelt Island, and you're not going to be able to find them. And they never work, and it's a really bad idea. And it's a really bad idea. And it's a really bad idea. And you want a restricted declaration, it's a really bad idea.
Okay,
And
I wasn't
all the
there
while
to
he couldn't
chat
look
with
me
them.
in the eye.
They said essentially what you've just repeated.
That was me quoting the political consultants.
Yeah.
Which only, You know, I walked out of there and go, wow, it must be a really good idea. That's all I could figure. And I couldn't get a hold of Jeffrey. I mean, I almost knocked on Jeffrey's. If Jeffrey didn't have a young child, I would have knocked on his door in my apartment building because I wanted to say, wait, you know, correct me if I'm wrong here. But Jeffrey was like, no, you know.
They would love to steamroll over us. They'd love
That's
it.
that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah,
Good luck
I
with
They
believe.
just want to push us to the side, that's all. They
Steam.
don't want to know about the
Yeah.
community, they just want to do their thing.
Yeah, Matt.
I would love to find a way that we can use this competition between Stanford and Cornell to our advantage, because I think there's a real advantage to be gained here. By them competing over Roosevelt Island, we can make requests, that's code for demands, that otherwise we might not be able to get away with. So I think this could work in our behalf.
I do think it's a real opportunity. I do sort of, I mean, this is just my personal impression, you know, that it might already be a setup, a la sort of what Dick was talking about.
And on the,
Sort of state versus city kind of, you know, what does Cornell want, what does Bloomberg want kind of thing.
Explain again the 217 thing again. So they said that the principal had been invited but couldn't come for whatever reason.
Sally simply say she couldn't make it. That was his final comment.
She couldn't make it, and this is because the child's school was interested in Cornell developing a K-12 angle on this, and then were they initiating the K-12 angle? Or was
Cornell seemed, well, I really think it was the political consultant, but Cornell was initiating. Cornell talked a lot about being a land-grant institution, cooperative extension education. This is what they're known for, you know, being involved in education in communities, and so therefore for them to be involved in K-12 education. I did actually have an opportunity to ask Sal if he knew how many kids went off island to school. And he said he didn't, and then that brought up that there were 12 kids at the child's school from Roosevelt Island, which the people from Cornell were slightly taken aback by. I think that's really where I upset the political consultant, is it was sort of clear that maybe that wasn't the right school to be talking to. Rick, you had your hand
Just
up.
on the school issue again, I was told that the meeting was originally scheduled for 9 a.m. And because it was at 9 a.m., the principal said, that's the middle of my day and I can't make it at that particular time. And when I talked to one of her colleagues who told me this, the colleague told me that had they known the meeting was rescheduled for later in the day, which they did not know, they would have been able to attend.
Here's just a factoid. I've heard that about 150 children attend the UN school, and I think there are 4 buses that pick them up. Just as data.
Right.
If you're Cornell and you're trying to make a choice of who you make a contact with, who can exercise political influence on your behalf, you don't go to the principal of a public school and say, help us out. You go to somebody with political connections.
I'm with Dick on this one here. I think
Well, they're trying to impress the city. They're trying to impress the people reviewing the RFP. And an investment in K-12 is something that's a no-brainer that everyone should love.
Maybe I'm biased by but somehow I have a feeling this could possibly be the other way around. That the governor sort of said, "Get your horse in the race, Cornell. I want this." And that's just my. Well, no, actually, it is my intuition, but it's my intuition based on the fact that Cornell said they were scrambling to get their proposal together. They were very clear about they were scrambling to get the proposal together. They didn't have a lot of time. And so I thought, I mean, that's, just so different than, Stanford's been so far out in front of this. And so I thought, well, why did they all of a sudden decide to scramble to get their proposal together?
So I'm still confused about their interest in K-12 here, because the RFP is for a applied science research center. And is this provision of education for their employees, or, I mean, children of their employees, I mean, I don't get the.
Honestly, I think it was a
gimme for South
misguided,
Ferrara.
I think it was a misguided attempt to check off community benefit. I mean, I could be
Oh, oh.
wrong, I mean, and, you know,
This would be
please.
part
It sounds like a smokescreen. It just sounds
This
like,
would be-
here's a bone.
Yeah, it sells.
That's what it really felt like.
Oh, that they would invest in K through 12.
It's a way to get them in the door to talk to South Ferrara.
Exactly. Let's just talk.
What is it they were proposing to do? Set up another K through 12 school, or enhance what's here, or
Enhance.
Enhancement.
enhance 217, or enhance the child?
But
Partner and enhance the child's.
It's a strange choice, given that the child school is specifically for emotionally and learning disabled children. It's not a mainstream school. and-
Sal was very clear of what the school was,
Yeah,
what
so
it is.
why then would they be targeting that
I
kind of
honestly
school?
think this, the consultant, political consultant, it was his idea, to the extent that I've been able to read about Sarah, however you say her name, what they're known for is sort of on the ground, kind of getting to know the community supposedly, and as opposed to maybe public PR, if you will. I honestly, I mean, you know, I think it was the consultant's idea. And I think Cornell themselves as a school, the two people in the room were shocked when they.
Denise, you do well to just forget the K through 12 idea.
No, I'm not on the K through 12
No,
idea.
I'm saying, everybody's worried, why are they interested in K through 12? Why the child school? What, now? They're interested in South Ferrara. The K through 12 has nothing to do with anything.
But why, but at the end of the day, this is still a city project by NYEDC on city land. And I can see what you're saying, the political consultants might be interested in Sal, but that didn't seem like a great choice.
Maybe
Not a
somebody
good
just
place to
didn't do
go.
their homework. I'm much more concerned about the fact that Stanford came directly to the community through us, and Cornell opted to go to a peripheral institution before coming to us.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a real concern.
Well, that's why,
Now, is that gonna be reported? Beyond here?
You know,
If I,
probably. Ellen had her hand up.
I do, in defense of Cornell, I do want to say that they have a history of working with schools.
Right, and they said that.
They actually said that.
They were very clear about it. I think the two people from Cornell there were,
Clueless.
That's the word.
they were absolutely innocent in the process. Yeah, they're like trying to get it read together, trying to think, and they're depending on this consultant to take them to a meeting. Consultant takes them to the meeting. They find out in the meeting that there aren't that many people from, many kids from Roosevelt Island. They find out there's this other community coalition. They find out we're planning on doing a CBA, and I know I didn't make their weekend.
Which
I mean, I
makes
just
next
know that.
Tuesday's meeting that much more
Right.
important.
And for next Tuesday's meeting, I've made it subsequently very clear to Michael Kellner's office that, you know, we exist, that we are very serious about doing the CBA and doing it correctly. I actually asked Ricky, the woman's name who's contacted me, I don't know those people over there at all, and she knew.
Microsoft?
Yeah, yeah. I asked her today, I said, well, would the assemblyman be open to a similar meeting if Stanford called? And she had to answer that question.
She's
Granted.
in 5 minutes. She's
Okay.
got to find out. She doesn't want to step in a political landmine and not know.
Okay.
Who's all going to the Tuesday meeting? I know I can't make that one. So a show of hands?
Jonathan's going, I know.
how does one get invited to that?
They called me.
I asked
Kellner's
her,
office
I
called.
Kellner's
asked her
office.
for you to give
It's
me
his
the
show.
invite.
You're being invited.
I got called,
You go. Good.
I know Dolores was invited.
yeah.
Oh, you know what, Jonathan may, because Jonathan got called sometime Thursday or Friday, and Jonathan had this list, it had you and Dolores on it for the obvious reasons, and so I bet you he gave them that list.
She didn't have a full list when I was talking to her, but I asked her to get back to me with it so we can find out who's invited and what's going on.
Got it.
Could you pull up Pete's bio in their website and just see if anything resonates with, like Matt?
I Googled him. He's
Well,
got
there's a-
connections to
No,
Spitzer.
Pete or Angela.
Right, he was,
Doesn't
right.
help a whole lot.
Well, he, right.
Huh?
But he's connected to state politics.
Well, he
is
worked,
the point.
no, I know, but I just thought it'd be interesting to look at, it's just a paragraph, just to see what, It's in their web, but it's
Yeah,
in
I
the
gotta-
firm's
I gotta
website.
try it. Is this their, let's see, yeah, lobbies. Why is it so hard?
Wasn't that where you were? Wasn't that the
No,
website?
she was on Crane's.
I was on
Oh,
Crane.
Crane's.
You know, business.
Do you know if the consulting firm has any relationship to the child's school?
There you go.
Have they ever lobbied on their behalf?
I don't know. There was nothing.
There he is, Pete.
There he is.
There he is.
There he is.
Pete.
Pete is not a fan of community benefit agreements.
Aw, poor Pete.
He was a bit of a wreck by the end. I mean, I never seen anyone leave a meeting as quickly as he did.
Well, he's worked in organized labor. It just seems like he's not been in around these kind of development. I'm not defending him, but.
No, and he actually made a comment that Roosevelt Island is a
See,
very
he's done-
unique community.
Right, but he's done a lot of labor work. I'm just saying, it's interesting that he's the lobbyist when he doesn't have much experience with these kind of developments. I'm just saying from Cornell's standpoint. I mean, so that therefore.
That's why I mean, I could be
He
wrong.
was really taken aback. I mean, I don't see it in his experience.
His bio is very general. I don't know, I get the feeling he's really a patsy, they're just sticking him out front, and he's gonna take he's gonna field all the questions, he's gonna, and he's just there to try and deflect from what appears to be, some underlying things going on, political things, very little that I know, is this impression I get just from listening so far.
Yeah, Mark.
I have an idea, You said they were surprised to hear that we were forming this coalition for a community benefits agreement. Why don't we rectify that situation and figure out how to get a letter to everyone who received the RFP and say, Roosevelt Island is forming a community benefits agreement, we will expect to deal with you. And you can contact us through our attorney, or through whoever, through our sports group, through our chairman, and let all 29 or 27 entities, groups, or get it on the table right now before they have to respond. Let
Yeah.
everyone know we're out here.
Right.
Even if it's just a letter from one of us personally saying, hey, my name is Mark Edwards and I live on the island and I am in favor of forming a group we're already forming a group but even if it's not from us, it's from an individual. It could be from RIRA, it could be from.
It would appear the two main players know already, it just seems like it's really Cornell or Stanford at this point.
I wouldn't.
There can be
Oh, I
some-
did
Just
think
because
that-
people are saying things doesn't make that the
Yeah,
truth.
but that's a little bit.
But what's it hurt us to
I
let
hear what
everyone
you're
know?
saying, but in essence, this is really the cart before the horse kind of thing. We really need to know who's going to get awarded the project before,
Well,
and
no.
then there's things to be done then.
Just the opposite.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think we could get all thinking about it now.
Well, you
so-
can think about it, we're all thinking about it.
No,
What
get,
do you actually
get
do?
the respondents to think about it. So when their RFP response goes to the city, it says, hey, we know there's a CBA going to be formed and we are on board, we are willing to negotiate and deal with these people. Make them put it, if they're smart, they'll put it in writing.
I'd
I
like
bet
to,
the phone
I
calls
don't
and
just
flood-
to stick my oar in the stream on that and agree completely. You gotta stop trying to figure out what other people are doing, and you gotta do something very active and very public and very out there to say, we are here, you have to deal with us.
Yeah. Otherwise, the phone calls are going to keep going to South
Well,
Raritan.
that's partly why I invited you tonight, Dick.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's diffuse the situation. Let's just take control of the situation by letting everyone know we exist.
Yeah.
Would-
Yeah.
is
But
that a secret?
I don't necessarily have a problem with that. What I don't have is the time to send a letter to.
Can we do that through the EDC, though?
That's
They
what-
have contact information for everyone.
It could
Good
be
idea.
it could be an addendum to the RFP if the EDC is
Yeah.
willing to do it.
I
In
will
fact-
write, well, actually, perhaps Jeff might
I don't
write
think the
something up
EDC
that would be more.
Yeah, Jeff, do you have a
Can
comment on
legally
that?
assume-
I think that
The EDC can legally
it's more
do
beneficial
that.
to have, it's beneficial to know the existence of the coalition and that there is community benefit agreement coming out. The reason being is that as they're putting the RFP, although they may not necessarily know what the community benefit agreement's going to say, they can actually allocate within their community budget how much they're willing to offer. And actually that becomes part of the response, saying that they are going to set aside however many dollars worth of money.
You were gonna say millions, weren't you?
I was going to stop myself for whatever purpose the community may need. So knowing that becomes a sticking point, because then they realize, we've got it's going to lay out a realistic number, knowing that there's going to be an agreement coming apart, versus an altruistic number of whatever amount.
I'm thinking that a letter on RIRA letterhead and signed by Jeffrey Escobar, Esquire, would make an impression.
I would think making it from the actual organization and whoever.
Yes, from the organization.
Yeah,
but you're speaking as counsel to this subcommittee.
Well, so it could either be Jeffrey speaking as counsel to the subcommittee, or I don't know if there's a preliminary form of Silicon Island Development Coalition.
Right. Something of that nature. Either one. I mean, I think that, and then whoever, and whether it be myself or you as the chair, saying that this is.
Could it be a joint signature?
I would say both.
So I would say yes. The only reason why I don't necessarily want to at this juncture is because, Cornell has been making movements to individually contact and meet with other members. For example, they've asked for the meeting with Kellner's office and for CPA members to attend. Kellner's office has no idea that I'm involved as counsel for the group. And so I'm actually kind of going in pushing with Cornell, making sure it's very clear to them that this is, I flat out asked Kellner's office, have you dealt with and invited these, this group to this meeting, because this is what it's for. The response back is, Cornell would like to meet individually with differing respective members of the community. So that says to me they're trying to get around working with the community benefit agreement. So right now, the initial letterhead, anytime afterwards, I think that'd be great. But as we push the message forward, I'd just like to be able to just kind of know where we are right now.
Denise, would you be okay in being the signer?
Well, I'm fine with signing.
We can wait after Tuesday to see how the lay of the land is after the meeting.
No,
When does the RFP due?
October 29th, I believe. 28th or 29th. 28th.
Certainly no later than October 1st. We need a letter after that.
Right.
They need
Well,
letters.
in the fact that we could distribute it through NYEDC, because actually, another thing that I took the liberty of doing, was sending a note to Eugene Lee and Rob Goldrich, who are apparently the NYEDC people, who are saying, if you'd like, well, basically what I was really doing is asking for us to get a seat at the table before the decision's made. I basically offered our input. I phrased it like, when you get to the final stages, when you're narrowing it down to the last few, because I didn't want to make it too laborious for you. If it would be helpful, we'd like to provide our input. And he happened to write me back right about 6 o'clock today saying, I'd love to do that and I'd love to talk to you about it. And actually, so I was hoping I'll set up for Thursday. Because that's sort of what I wanted. The purpose of the meeting was to bring you all up to date, but kind of figure out, okay, now how do we go forward in terms of getting, moving us in the direction that we wanted to go? How do we get a seat at the table? How do we get our input in earlier?
I just feel like we need to raise our own legitimacy.
Right.
By
right. No, you're absolutely
being a
right.
known.
You're absolutely right.
Every single respondent know we're out there.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree with that.
We don't want them to go meet with Sal and meet with the church and meet with make whatever deals they think they're going to make with those individuals, who then will subvert this group's.
Just out of curiosity, if they did that, Jeff, but yet we still existed and we were inserted into the process. Let's say Cornell was chosen and we were inserted into the process, and then they've gone and talked. Like, how would that likely play out?
And they're saying
it would be pretty.
And you're saying that they don't listen to this coalition and don't agree to, or won't negotiate. So that's the levy that the coalition would have, is that they would be able to actually raise quite a bit of political ruckus, because it's across this community spectrum, both in within the city, within the EDC, with politically, privately. That's kind of the fear that most developers have with the community benefit coalition, is that they don't want to have full force of community united on the front to stop the project or to cause problems with it.
Denise, picking up on what Jeff said, it would be like how effective RIRA has been so far in getting South RIRA off RIA.
Or Southtown, not
Yeah.
that.
You gotta understand that RIRA is not even on the radar for most of these people.
Well, I do understand that. That's why I made some of the choices that I made, frankly.
I think if they knew we were potentially on the selection committee, that would change their interest in us by orders of magnitude.
Well, I mean, that was my objective back. It's probably fair to say that John and I
we've
are
asked
going
to
to
be on
play this a
selection
little
committee.
bit differently, but because it needs to be a non-RIRA specific organization, I've maybe been deferring to him a little bit. I mean, as I'm thinking about this. What was my point of that?
However, we can still say in a letter that RIRA, as the elected representatives of the community, is establishing a CBA for the purpose of negotiating with whomever is chosen.
But RIRA is not establishing anything.
But we are.
We're
This is a RIRA
what we're
subcommittee.
doing is actually supporting the establishment of, I
Right.
think is
Is
actually
that
the
better
right,
choice?
probably the right language.
Sure.
Dottie.
The other thing is, obvious, this is going to be a continuing story for like the Wall Street Journal and hopefully for the Times. And, you may want to brief the reporter now on just the facts of, because it's, and also I forgot it's a she reporter.
The reporter in the Wall Street Journal today
Two men.
was Jacob Gershman.
But she may not even know that this is, and it's an exciting community story.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that brief report.
So, I think, briefing her, first of all, just on the existence, the coalition's in formation.
Right, I'm listening to you.
And that we've been working, since early summer. That's a good community story. And, this story is gonna continue to play, because it's again, the magnitude of the development. It's a big story.
Would you be willing to help us with that by any chance?
Yeah, I'll help with that. I think she should know, just the facts of how, how Stanford approached and how Cornell approached.
Are you talking